in the Seagram's block of Oshawa, Ontario. I'm an idol.
Don't be scared, homie. Come on. Okay, first of all, the world is smiling at you. The wrestling business is smiling at you. And don't you frown back on it.
Surprise, surprise, motherfucker. The king is back.
The man the hour, the man with the power. Too sweet to be sour.
Dylan Bowker.
Right now I'm talking to internationally renowned MMA analyst, MMA fighter, rock star, all around pretty cool dude. It's Robin Black. How's it going, man?
Dude, doing good. On the road to Montreal to commentate TKO with my buddy Ramdeen.
Yeah, and that's going to be super cool. TKO 38, the Ascension card, and anyone who has UFC Fight Pass can certainly check that out. That should be a good one, though. It's going at Tohu Circus Arts Hall. You're familiar with that venue, and you probably like the fact that there's arts in the title. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir. Fighting is the most impeccable art that there is. And some beautiful fights, and just wonderful, wonderful fights. Goche and Ronson, spectacular. But some of the young fighters on that card, that's what gets me pretty excited. Like, there are guys that are 18, 19 years old, and women today fighting that the level of skill and the things that they can do are pretty magical.
Yeah, it's really an amazing thing because you even see some of the earlier fights on the card. Like, for instance, the fight between James Clark and Jordan Graham. Jordan Graham is making his pro debut, but I mean, you wouldn't know what's going into that if you do a little bit of research, because he's just Tapology ranked bantamweight, bunch of finishes, has a submission win on his record, and I mean, James Clark has looked very impressive so far with that pro debut over Alexander Slicer. I thought he looked excellent.
Yeah, he did. He's one of these guys who can redline, through long periods of the fight, and a lot of these young guys can do that. They move so much more smoothly. When you're watching John Jones or Demetrius Johnson when you're coming up, your expectations for what's possible is so much higher that these young guys like the Laramie brothers, the Jourdain brothers, some of them are moving. They're doing things Anderson Silva was doing 5 years ago, and they grew up watching that.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of funny, too, that James Clark sort of made a comment in the post-fight interview saying you and Ramdeen weren't talking him up before the fight. You think you're going to be talking more about James Clark after this card?
I hope so. He definitely has a lot of potential. The kid fought his heart out, and he's fun to watch. But potential is something that comes with a responsibility. It's like Spider-Man and great power.
Yeah.
Responsibility to live up to it, and responsibility to push yourself further, and when you plateau, find new levels, and that's what you want to see out of James Clark. It's spectacular. You have a great first fight, and you need to have a great second fight, and then you need to get even better, and then you need to be able to look back at your first fight and say, oh man, I'm so much better than I was then, and that's what you hope for from a kid like that.
Yeah, and that's an important point to note because we're talking about the fluidity and just how experienced these up-and-coming MMA fighters are, but you can't be resting on your laurels. You got to even improve beyond the amazing stuff we're seeing now.
Yeah, I mean, if some of these young guys are comparing themselves to where, Uriah Faber or Matt Hughes was at 5 years ago and going, man, I'm as good as these guys. Well, there will be guys that look back at you at this stage and say, yeah, see how retro those guys are, see how not modern, and so you have to be one of those guys. So, and that the same goes for Cody Garbrandt. Just because you are as good, if not the best, right this minute, if you don't continue to grow, people will surpass you. That's part of the game, is that ever-changing nature of fighting and fighters. So it's one of those things. I'm always excited to see a talented kid like that, and I'm excited to see, people who are confident and know how to play some of the other games and entertain and stuff. But really, I'm going to be more interested to see how good some of these guys are when they're 25 and when they're 7 fights in. But I love seeing them fight right now, and I love seeing them develop at this stage.
Yeah, it seems like MMA goes through these rotations every 5 years or so where there's just a big paradigm shift, and all of a sudden you're watching the same sport, but it's almost something altogether different. Like the Kevin Genero, Rob Saris lightweight fight's kind of an interesting one because I feel like years ago people would be like, oh, Kevin's got the amateur kickboxing experience and Robert has the multiple submission wins, so it's a striker versus a grappler, but we don't really view things in those kind of simplistic, kind of almost binary terms anymore, like grappler versus striker.
Yeah, we shouldn't, and sometimes we do as mechanisms, when you're calling a fight or you and I are talking about it, people are driving their car or doing something with their family. They don't have time to analyze the complexities of a video game or a glass of wine or fighting. That's what we do. We're doing it for them. And not everybody wants to go to that deepest of depths as a wine drinker or as a video game player or a fight consumer. But if we're being honest, yes, those are old, ancient terms that should be written on scrolls in Egypt.
Yeah.
They don't apply. But those concepts are still valuable because there will be moments within that fight where there will be a grappler mindset and a striker mindset and the dynamic between that. So you get these little micro comparisons now that are still valuable, but the broad strokes comparisons, yeah, exactly. Just because you kickbox and I submitted a lot of guys in a gi 5 years ago, it really doesn't have to dictate who I am in the cage tonight.
No, it's totally true. I absolutely agree with you on that, man. But I wanted to talk about the Tony Laramie fight because we kind of touched on the Laramie brothers there a little bit earlier. And a very compelling fight here with Tony Laramie and Derek Falk, an amazing kind of prospects battle. I mean, man-child, Tapology's number 8th ranked flyweight in Canada, and kind of comes from my neck of the woods there with Bruckman Martial Arts in Oshawa, Ontario. So really, really interesting fight. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it's early on the night, and it's really, Ramdean and I are going to have to be very careful not to, blow out our voices and our excitement. And
yeah.
That's up the whole night. Falk versus Laramie may be the fight we're most excited about. I'm excited because of the moments in time that these two guys meet. Same thing. Neither one of these guys, and I know Derek, both of them, Derek in particular, is thinking about how to grow and how to get better and who he'll be as a fighter in 5 years, and that's part of Bruckman's mentality. Laramie's is a psychopath. He's a little crazy monster, and incredibly talented, really gifted, fearless, and a little crazy in a good way, like a sweet, sweet kid. But it's the moment in time that they're meeting. I hope that there are others on their level. If you talk to Justin or you talk to Reno Belcastro, their respective coaches, both of them will say, man, you've never seen anything like this. And I argue with them. They're friends of ours, very dear friends, both of them. But I'll have a beer and argue with them. Yes, I have. Yes, I have. And it's out there. And just because what you're seeing is a modern reflection of greatness, and you haven't seen it come before, doesn't mean it's not part of a global phenomenon of greatness. There isn't only one brilliant freestyle rapper only in Cleveland. There's one in Cleveland, and there's one in Atlanta, and there's one in England, and that's what happens when skill levels rise. Is the maximum, the ceiling of skill rises as well. And these two are wonderful martial artists, young martial artists. But if either one of them or their team overly pats themselves on the back in that regard, win or lose in this fight, they will not be the champion that they have the potential to be. So these guys have to, like all of these other fighters, have to think about continually growing as a martial artist, and they do. So, but they meet at this time, in this moment, where, both of their skills are unbelievable. They're both so incredibly fluid. Their joints are greased. You know what I mean? Everything is expressed loosely and freely. And they can, we don't even need to say that they can wrestle and strike and move their head and do all these things. They can do all of those things. It's about how they'll do them in contrast with each other on Friday night. And we've seen from Laramie, he will take some risks. And so there's going to be a risk-taking element that's going to be at play. Derek can catch you. So I can't believe how good this fight is. And I feel so fortunate that both of these two spectacular fighters and coaches understand that competition on the way up is good. That we're both of them. It reflects so well on their teams to understand that if you padded these kids' record coming up, you would not be allowing them to reach their maximum ceiling. You would be repressing them. And by letting them fight each other, we've just made both of them better, and it's going to be an unreal fight.
Yeah, and it kind of bears a similar complexion to Tony Laramie's prior fight when he fought Kevin Lee's younger brother, Keith Lee. Just amazing and sort of unfathomable to see people, that early in their career doing things like that, and sort of speaks at large to the flyweight scene we have here in Canada right now. A number of just amazing 125-pound fighters, both who are established and on the come-up. I mean, Yoni Sherbatov, you could cite a guy like that immediately.
Can you imagine if Laramie fought Kevin Lee, then Derek Falk, and then Yoni Sherbatov? Or all of these guys at this level will be fighting each other because there's a bunch of them coming up with that level of skill and that level of mentality and ferocity. And no matter what happens in this fight, the fact that these two guys were willing to fight each other at this stage, and one of them will win and we will see an unreal fight, they've just both really made their future stronger. And I really am glad that people are seeing that. I'm glad this concept of, getting your guy to 6-0 with easy fights, people are understanding you damage your fighter that way. This isn't boxing. This isn't 1997. This is a rapidly accelerating, evolving moment in the development of the living organism of mixed martial arts. And if you aren't in it at this level, just get out of it. Just realize you're not going to be a champion because they are fighting for their position at the top, and they're starting out this young. And that, to me, is just an incredible, incredible thing to witness.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm kind of jumping on the opposite end of the spectrum with weight classes here, but I thought the Adam Ditska fight is going to be a very interesting one, taking on the debuting Bobby Sullivan. And the thing with Adam Ditska, 4-0 professionally, but the number 5 ranked heavyweight in Canada on Tapology, and yeah, riding a 9-fight winning streak dating back to even his amateur days. I think this guy has a lot of great potential as a heavyweight prospect. When you look at the Canadian scene, a lot of people bring up Smolino Rama and Tanner Bozier, and for good reason those guys get brought up. But I feel like a guy like Adam Ditska, just the experience he has so far, what he's done, the fact he's teammates at Speedy Gym with Patrick Cote, I think we'll be hearing about Kung Fu Panda quite a bit on, TKO's a big stage, but I think even you could see him UFC, Bellator, something like that going ahead. I think Ditska has a lot of potential.
I hope that Ditska does stay at TKO for some length of time as TKO continues to grow. And I don't even think there's a discussion about what the biggest and most important show in Canada is now, for sure. That was TKO on its first life, and it certainly is now. And I hope that Ditska, we get to call some of his fights for another 2, 3, 4 fights. But you're right, heavyweights move quickly. You get a couple more first-round knockouts, and you do it the way he's been doing it. People want to see you fight. The most people, maximum, want to see you fight. But I hope we do get to call him for a while. But don't sleep on Bobby Sullivan, man. So as soon as the fight was announced, he reached out to me on Facebook. In my last fight, I fought his coach, Derek Charbonneau. And Derek is a dangerous fighter in his own right, and he fought only tough fights, except for me. He fought only tough guys. He fought Eamon Zahabi as an amateur, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's smart. He's a great coach. And he's been learning a lot and developing as a coach a lot. And his guys have been winning on amateur. They're smart fighters. They're good fighters. And Sullivan sent me a message, and he said, hey, man, I'm really excited for you to call my fight. I'm going to knock this guy out. You watch. And he's been knocking out dudes in amateur. They're traveling around. They're always the away team. They're always the guys that, are fighting the hometown guys, so they're mentally prepared for that. And Adam gets hit, man. That's one of the reasons we love watching Adam fight, is because he'll take one to give one. And usually him giving one will put your lights out. But Bobby's a tough one, and Bobby's going to hit him too. So I don't think people should just be assuming, and I know Adam isn't, but I don't think people should just be assuming that there's going to be 3 exchanges and Bobby Sullivan will fall down, because that is not necessarily the case. It's always possible when you got power like Ditska. But people like that kid. We love him, and a lot of people come out and buy tickets to see him fight, and for good reason.
Yeah, I totally get what you mean, and I didn't necessarily mean to give the impression I was discounting Bobby in that one, but it's a heavyweight fight. He could certainly catch him, and like you said, he's very confident, and he's done a lot in his amateur career, so yeah, it's a very compelling fight in that sense. You gotta always be glued to the heavyweight fights, but a fight I'm glued to is Charles Jourdain, Maxime Dubois. I think this fight has some very interesting elements to it. Jourdain, just a 21-year-old with submission capabilities, great striking, and pulled off a kind of wild Sakuraba jumping hammer fist sort of deal against Ligi, so kind of got the thumbs up for me on that one. But no, it's a compelling fight, and Maxime Dubois is a guy who has a number of finishes as well. He is coming off a loss to TJ Laramie there, but the Gladiator certainly has a lot he's bringing to the table as well. What are your thoughts on the Jourdain-Dubois fight coming up?
Yeah, Dubois in a lot of ways will be a very tough fight for Jourdain. Jourdain, we love watching him fight. We love calling his fights. Ramdeen every time points out that it's really odd how calm he is. But he's the right kind of calm, because there is too calm. There is not, they call it, like a type of stimulation, or they call it arousal, to fight. There's a certain amount of arousal that is required psychologically. And too much is not good. You can't perform, but too little is not good either. And he's right in the pocket. He's just that right amount of, of presence in the fight. But he's facing a guy in Dubois who's been around. He's comfortable everywhere. He's not going to get thrown off. He's got training partners that are kind of innovative and play games himself. So he's a good test for Jourdain. Jourdain seems to have a real good head on his shoulders about continued hard work and about being better than he was last time and breaking through with performances that would beat him a year ago. And so that's important. I love the fight, though. I love watching this kid fight. It's really, I feel so lucky, man. Like, what Stefan has done isn't just kind of revive TKO. There's a new flavor to it. It's young and it's innovative and it's edgy. And these fighters, he did an unreal job of finding all the right fighters because, and it's the right time too. Quebec and Ontario, it's very difficult to do a show now. You need to have super experienced promoters. And as a result, it's there. It's a perfect time for TKO.
Yeah, you don't really see too many cards coming up in Quebec and Ontario because it's just some of the measures that go into it. You're almost bleeding out money before getting into it. That's why I was happy to see that BTC card that's coming up in Toronto in May. I wonder, are you going to be involved with that at all?
Nobody has reached out to us yet, and if they have, it slips through my filters.
You probably have tons of messages coming through anyway, so fair enough.
What's that?
I said you probably have a ton of messages coming through, so fair enough. Some of them slipping through the cracks now and again.
So we stopped, Rambine and I stopped working at Fight Network only 3 weeks ago. Yeah. And in that time, I've made almost 30 pieces of analysis and commentary and stuff for my YouTube channel. I've gone to Albuquerque to interview Cub and Diego. We're in the car right now going to TKO to call it. Saturday, I'm going to Buffalo to work for UFC.com at 2:10. And then Wednesday, I'm flying to Russia for ACB 57. So it's been, and I feel very fortunate to be able to tell you all that it's happening very quickly. The kind of freelance vibe is really fun. As long as I get to be talking about fights and analyzing fights, and for a Friday night, me and Ramdeen get to be sitting at the side live during the fights, I'm happy. So, but it has been busy. So if anybody knows those guys, please tell them to reach out to us because we'd love to contribute.
Yeah, and I'm sure you'll be getting someone reaching out soon. Like you said, you've got a lot kind of going on right now, and it's really good to see that because when I saw you were a free agent from Fight Network, as you put it on Twitter, it kind of had me scratching my head. I was like, really? You're going to get rid of Robin Black and John Ramdeen and just all these different guys? But you've been doing super well, man, and I think this sort of medium suits you because there's full autonomy. You can get your creativity out there as you want to do it, and it seems like you're really taking advantage of that with things like Patreon. You're getting thousands and thousands of subscribers, so no, it's a good thing to see.
Thanks, man. It has been really cool. I mean, what you realize, Fight Network was a very, very open, very non-control-y type as far as us making our content and talking about fighting and doing analysis and doing opinion. We had a lot of free reign. We really did. But not as much free reign as when you have no structure. We can literally, last night, Ramdeen and I sat, we had a beer right on the table as we were sitting there talking about 5 or 6 different fights from the Cub Swanson card and the Demetrius Johnson card and TKO, hanging out in an art gallery, chatting about fighting with a beer in our hand. And people are wanting to share it with us and wanting to hang out there and take that in. And that, to me, is an incredible gift. As long as I can put food on my wife and I's table and we get to do that, I live a happy life.
And that's awesome, man. You get the vibe that it's a lot more laid back. And, well, I mean, you got that sense with Fight Network, too, but there's certain constraints there. Like, oh, you got to throw a commercial break, or you have this certain time to do this. It's good to have a long-form sort of an opportunity to espouse your beliefs as you want to do without being tethered to certain things. But I was watching some of your early videos there that you've been dropping on the channel, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think I noticed a Forgotten Rebels 12-inch vinyl in the background. Am I correct in seeing that?
Yeah, that was there. And, I've got a good, my first couple, I literally, I was supposed to be back at work Monday, but we weren't working there anymore. And so by Tuesday, I sat in there and stacked up my records and put a mic there, and, Forgotten Rebels was in there. Actually, I think you're looking at the Forgotten Rebels poster. That is a mounted poster. And I love those guys. I'm a big fan of those guys, and I still see them every now and again, every couple of years in Hamilton.
Yeah, are you big into the 77 punk scene that was around the GTA at that time, like the Vile Tones, Teenage Head, the Diodes, stuff like that?
When Teenage Head did a show in honor of Frankie, I got up on stage and did a couple songs with them. It was a great honor.
That's amazing. You were up there singing Disgustine sort of thing?
Yep. And, yeah, it was a great honor. And I didn't know the Vile Tones that much back then, but I've since heard a lot of their stuff. And, you know, as you get into the 90s in Toronto on Queen Street, you're going to hear it and see how influential they were. And Slow out of Vancouver. And Vancouver had some really good kind of punk stuff. But I kind of came along a little bit after that, to be honest. And it was a much more sort of glitter punk kind of thing that I did with my band. It was really, really fun. And it's fun to talk about it. And now that, you know, we have the kind of freedom to do the stuff that we can do, you know, week to week, realize and it's something that we have talked about a lot over the last couple of years and explored a lot in our study of the martial arts, but you realize just how connected martial arts is to music and fine arts and painting and things like that. It's truly an art form, and it's really, it's one of my mandates, and those things are why our purpose, you know, changes with time. For everybody, they always should. But right now, one of my mandates is to shift the way, at least do my part, and Ramdeen and I and Mullins and any of our crew do my part to shift that. So we're not just always talking about a spectacle, and we're not just always talking about a sport, but we're remembering that this is a fine arts as well. And that's something that's really important to my coverage and to the people around me. And we try to spread that so that conversation is happening elsewhere. I don't care if we get credit for being a driving force of that or not. I hope that Tyron Woodley is sitting at the desk on Fox, and somewhere in that, you know, push to make fighting represented more as art and less as spectacle, that guys like that are doing it too, or Brian Stan, who consumes a lot of our stuff, starts to pass some of those ideas around. It's important to me, and I think it's important to a lot of the fighters.
Yeah, it certainly is, because, yeah, like you said, we're kind of getting into that direction of the WME IMG era. We're getting Michael Bisping GSP fight, and not to diss those fighters or anything like that, but it's just the lack of, you know, meritocracy, and it's creating a logjam at 185. But yeah, the whole art over the excellence of, or the spectacle over the art of what we're seeing is it's a bit of a bummer. And I don't know, I this is me kind of putting my tinfoil hat on for a second, but I feel like WME IMG might unfortunately take out the flyweight division at some point going ahead, because they don't really get too much in terms of buy rates or TV ratings or anything like that. And it's upsetting because there's some really great martial artists there, but I don't know. I feel like that could happen. I saw a picture on Twitter of Sakaki Bara with Demetrius Johnson, so I kind of put the old tinfoil hat on for a second.
I think the best martial artists in the world fight at 145, 135, and 125 pounds.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Pure talent and skill and combat. They're the best in the world. So I hope that never happens. I don't think that that's accurate when I think about it, because it doesn't really cost you anything. You just pay them less. And that sucks. If Demetrius Johnson makes less money than Stipe Miocic just because of the size that he is, that sucks to me. But I don't think you have to get rid of flyweights. They realize that in boxing, flyweights make less money. In boxing, the lower weight classes make less money. There's no structure in place that forces that. There's no rule book that says that. There's no handbook that says, here will be your salaries. It's just when they're negotiated, they're lower. That sucks, but I would suspect that's the model that will happen. I don't think you have to get rid of it. I don't think they will get rid of it. I wish they wouldn't even talk about less money, but I bet that's where the machine will go. It'll just pay them less because it'll have weird metrics that only mathematicians understand, and they'll show them and say, this is how much you're worth to us, so you get paid less. That sucks, but I bet that's the way they'll go.
Yeah, and I was kind of going off that with the whole free agent era we have right now. Like, maybe they see Ryzen wants to pay them more, and then they'll go over there. I mean, we saw that happen with Kyoji Horiguchi, who's a top-ranked flyweight there. But, yeah, I mean, Michael Imperato, Xavier Aloui, that's another fight in those lower weight classes that's going to be very, very compelling. A fight at bantamweight. I'm just really excited for this card, man. Jesse Body Snatcher Ronson versus Derek Gauthier. That's going to be an amazing one. Body Snatcher ranked #1 lightweight in Canada, and Gauthier coming off that big wild knockout over Horodecki. So I'm really stoked for it. I imagine you are, and I appreciate you giving me all this time here. So anything you want to add as we wrap up here?
Hey, it's good hanging with you, man. I really dig your perspective on fighting. I hope people check out my YouTube channel. If you put my name into the YouTube machine, I'm pretty sure it's one of the first couple things that comes up. Where, we got Ramdeen and Mullins and some other friends, and we're doing interviews, and we're talking about fighting. And we're talking about how fighting shapes life and all kinds of good stuff. But make sure people do go on Fight Pass, or if you got Fight Network, check out TKO 38, because it's going to be spectacular. And follow me on Twitter. It's Robin Black MMA.
Yeah, hopefully people do that. Internationally renowned MMA analyst, rockstar, all-around cool dude. Thanks for the time, Robin Black. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your drive there, and I'll be checking out your work on the TKO card.
Thanks, my brother. Enjoy the hostilities, my friends.
There we go. Perfect. Great way to end it off. Have a good one, man.
Thanks, man.
Good one, man.
Thanks, man.
Good one, man.
Thanks, man.
Good one, man.